on Monday, I will be going out of town. And by out of town, I mean very out of town. I am going out of state to an incredible location. This is a location that if you would have told me even 2 months ago that I would be able to go here, I probably would have laughed at you. It will be me covering audio and video, doing interviews. Insiders will have access to all audio and all video. I may or may not be doing Facebook Lives while I am there. Pretty sure I will, as long as the reception hangs on long enough to do that. This property is incredible. It will be an indoor-outdoor situation. And like I said, I will be getting video and interviews while I am there for the most part of next week. Some of the audio will be released to my listeners, but for insiders, they get the bulk of everything, audio and video, which I will be shooting both of myself. So, very excited to be going to this location. I will be announcing when I can to the rest of you where I am going, but it is top secret for now. So if you were ever on the fence as far as getting on Insider and becoming a part and supporting the show, I will proudly say now is the time to do that. $5 a month or $54 a year will get you full access to Insider. Visit IntoTheFrayRadio.com for more details. Thanks again for supporting and listening to the show, and enjoy the episode. So on this episode, I have an anonymous person on with me, and you will hear why he needs to stay anonymous, but I got some emails from him, and he is here to tell of a few various encounters. So welcome, sir.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it, and I've been racking my brain. As you know, yesterday I think I was enthusiastically, I wrote you an email thinking it was already time to call.
Yes,
because
you were ready
to tell a story. I was ready.
Yeah, I'm like, well, so, I think it was tomorrow, but yeah, that's good. I appreciate that. So yeah, you have quite a bit to share, don't you?
Yeah, and I do apologize for all my emails. I don't mean to bug you with them, but
nope, not bugging me at all.
The idea of having this outlet to me, because I've never told this story verbally to anybody. This is the very first time, and this happened in 2009. So kind of just eating away at me. But I came across your podcast and felt compelled, and it's a really good show. And I thought, hey, this is a perfect time to come out with it. So it'd be good. So I'll jump right into the very beginning of all of this. In 2009, I was a deputy sheriff, and a part of my beat was in a kind of a rural county area, not just kind of houses spread out. And I would get these calls into a house that was abandoned. I don't know how long it had been abandoned for, but there would be 911 calls that the operator would get, and it would just be a 911 call and a hang up, and that's it from the house that was abandoned. So about 2 or 3 times, with maybe in the course of like a month, I would, take the call, roll out to the house, go check things out. And there's nobody living there, no furniture inside. I could see inside. And whenever you have something like that, it's a 911 call, and there's just nothing to go by. You just call it in as unfounded, meaning there's just nothing here. Could have been something with the phone lines. That's just kind of my thought. And so the first 2 or 3 times, that's kind of how it went. And the last time that I had a 911 call coming from there, I responded like I always did, thinking this was nothing. And so I drive out to the house, and I worked graveyards, but I would kind of start my shifts as the sun was going down. So it was getting dark out, and I get there like I usually did, walk the perimeter of the house, just kind of scoping things out like I always do. And there's a back patio, like a glass slider that you can, no blinds or nothing. I can clearly see in the house. There's enough light out where I can see inside. It's a 2-story house. And this particular call, I looked inside, and I saw a figure walking upstairs. And I thought, wow, there's somebody here this time. This is strange. So, and the figure wasn't like a person. It was just kind of, from my viewpoint, just a shadowy figure. Mm-hmm. And so I call in. I said, okay, I need whenever you go into a house to search it, you got to call in for radio silence for safety concerns. So I did that. The slider was open, so I get my flashlight out, walk in. I'm kind of looking around, scoping things out before I went upstairs where this figure went. Nothing downstairs, so I started to make my way upstairs. And when I walked upstairs, there's a couple rooms up there. I searched one room, nothing. Went to the next room. And when I went into this next room, my radio went out. My flashlight stopped working. And so I was dead, without any electronics. I could barely see. I was doing the thing where I'm tapping my flashlight on my palm to get it working, old school. Nothing's going. So I thought, okay, this isn't good. I don't know if there's someone up here, but I gotta do my job. So I enter this room, and pretty dark, barely. There's a window, so a little bit of light's coming through. And on the far side of the room, I just immediately saw that there was just a huge dark figure standing there. And don't want to say there's the Hat Man. It didn't really look like a Hat Man or anything like that, but it was definitely what I would consider a shadow figure. And it, freaked me out. But in the back of my head, I'm thinking, well, it's dark in here. It could be a person. So I'm started doing the thing, sheriff's department, is everything okay? And it's not responding. It's just kind of standing there. I'm thinking, this is weird. And the next thing that happened was the figure just started moving towards me. Mm. And, just really dark figure, like how you've explained in the past, just darker than dark, like completely sucking in all the light, and it's moving towards me slowly, and I'm starting to, say, hey, stay where you're at, don't come closer, and it wouldn't stop. And the next thing I know, this is where it starts getting real strange, is I don't remember anything after that. The next thing I know, I'm in my patrol car, and I'm driving on a kind of desolate road about a half mile from this house. And it was the strangest feeling, like just kind of a dream-like feeling where I'm like, what is going on? I'm just driving, and I was, all I remember was being in this house. And I hear my radio, when you have radio silence, when you do that, everybody's listening in, they just kind of want to know what's going on. And so my radio's blowing up saying, are you okay? Are you code 4? Meaning, is everything good? And I just quickly hit my radio, said, yeah, code 4, I'm okay. And I'm driving, and all of a sudden I get just this intense, just out of this world, like ringing in both my ears, and I just started getting really dizzy, like extremely dizzy. So I immediately pulled over and just kind of lightheaded, kind of panicking a little bit, not knowing what's going on. So what I did was, instead of going over the radio, because I don't know if it was embarrassment or not, I just called my sergeant. I called his cell phone directly, and I told him what was going on. I said, hey, I'm really lightheaded. I don't know. I think I'm going to pass out. He said, well, where are you at? I'm going to send deputies out there to come get you. And I said, I told him where I was. And then the ringing stopped, but I was still dizzy and lightheaded. So just kind of thinking for officer safety, I took my duty belt off, thinking I might pass out here in the middle of nowhere. I locked it. I put it in my trunk. I locked the car in case I passed out. I didn't want to be sitting there with a gun on my hip. I never know who's out there.
Yeah.
So I just kind of sit down on the side of the road. I'm like panicking. I feel like I can't breathe. Kind of taking off. I took off my my uniform. All I had was just like my pants and my bulletproof vest on. So I'm laying there, and deputies arrive, and they're saying, "What's going on?" I say, "I don't know. I'm lightheaded. I'm dizzy." And so eventually the ambulance comes. They take me. They take me to the hospital, check me out. Everything kind of checked out there. The one doctor who was treating me kept asking me, were you smoking weed? Like, I was like, no, I wasn't smoking weed. Cop, come on, I was on duty. And he just kept asking me, are you sure? You sure? Is this confidential? I'm like, no, none of that. I just don't know what was going on. Just getting this ringing and dizziness. So ultimately, that night I was released. I went home. Just kind of told my wife what happened, but I didn't tell my wife what had happened prior to me getting the dizziness and being on the road. I didn't tell her anything about what I saw because I didn't want to scare her. I didn't want her to know. I didn't want her to be a part of that. And so next morning, about it was really early. It was like 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. Someone's knocking on my door, and I'm thinking, okay, who's knocking this early? So open my door, and there's these two guys standing there, black suits, really tall dudes, got sunglasses on, the whole kind of Men in Black description, and they start asking me questions about what happened the night before, and I didn't tell them what I saw. I just told them I went to this house, it was a 911 call. I cleared it, and I told them I drove away, and then I started, feeling real dizzy. And, I didn't give them any details on anything other than that. And so they start telling me that, okay, well, we just want to let you know you've been released from your duties, and we need your badge. We need this and that. I'm thinking, why? What did I do wrong? And they just kept telling me, this isn't disciplinary. Once you're feeling better, you can come back and reapply and get your job. This isn't disciplinary. That's all they kept telling me. And so they gave me this paper to sign, release forms. I said, oh crap. So, I was young, so I was pretty intimidated. I signed the papers, and they took my things and they left. And I was just kind of in shock. And my wife was asking me, what the hell? She was confused. What's going on? She said, I don't know. So the whole day just kind of was in shock. And the next following day, I get a call from one of my friends who I worked with. He was a corporal. And he called and said, hey, man, what's going on? Nobody here has heard from you. Your lieutenant, my captain, are wondering why you didn't show up for work. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I was released from, last night or, yesterday they came and they relieved me. They took my badge and this and that. And my buddy was like, oh man, they're wondering where you're at. So, trying to explain to them, no, they came and released me. They took my things, I signed the papers, and that was that. Mm-hmm. So he's the only one I was in contact with, really, and he was kind of playing middleman between the lieutenants and captains. And so what had happened was they were kind of calling me, bullshit. I don't know if I can cuss on this, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Go right ahead.
They were saying bullshit. Well, I don't know what you're saying, but we didn't release you. Mm. And I said, well, look, I've got the release forms. I can show you. And I said, well, we're going to need to see that. And I said, okay, I'll bring it down to the department and show you their forms. So then I hang up. I go back. I had, the paper was still sitting on my kitchen table from the day before, as far as I knew. And I go back, and the papers that I signed are just nowhere to be found in my house.
Oh, my
just
gosh.
not there. I'm just, like, scouring, panicking. Like, no, this isn't happening. So I called back, and I said, look, I can't find these papers. I don't know what happened to them. And he said, well, I'll tell you this. The captain's ready to file charges saying, they were saying, like, theft of department, equipment or my badge and this. And I was like, no way. I was like, you guys got to figure this out. I was like, this is not mine doing. So he said, they're going to give you 30 minutes to find these forms and prove that you're released. So I said,
oh, my gosh.
Okay, I'm going to find them. I got to find these papers. So I'm panicking. I'm looking for them. And about, 45 minutes later, my friend calls me and said, don't worry, you're good. Somebody from the county called and said that they have your badge, and that's all they want to say. And I'm like, okay, well, so then I'm good. Am I in trouble? They said, nope, you're good. That's it. And I said, do you know what's going on? Because he was kind of my friend. He's like, no, man, they all they're saying is that you had an epileptic seizure and that you had to be released. It's an epileptic seizure? I don't have epilepsy. And so that's kind of how all of that ended. I was just happy that they weren't going to be filing charges on me, and I didn't know who to go to. I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't want to go to the people who were threatening to arrest me and, try and talk to them.
Right.
So that was, I was young and intimidated by the whole situation. And so that's just kind of how my job ended. And he was kind of the only guy I was close with. And he was saying, word in the whole department is you had an epileptic seizure, and that was it. That's all they're saying. So, the weird thing is, after all that, for the next 2-3 months, I was continuously having the ringing and the dizziness in my ears off and on. And so I went and got looked at, and I had MRIs and things because I wanted to figure out what was going on. And one of the MRIs came back in my left ear. There was some kind of blockage, but they couldn't really tell what it was. And I went to a couple other ENT, ear, nose, and throat specialists. I got 2 or 3 opinions, and they're all saying the same thing. There's something in your inner ear that's blocking and causing this dizziness. And okay, there's something we can do. And I said, not really. There's not, once it's in the inner ear, there's just, they gave me medications to, they call them diuretics, to kind of flush fluids out, maybe thinking there was some fluids in there. Mm-hmm. And none of that worked, and I was still having it. And at some point, they just kind of stopped. They didn't happen as often, but since 2009, I will get the ringing and the dizziness, and I have really bad hearing in my left ear. So I don't know if any of that's connected to what happened. But the whole thing was just real strange, the way it went down. The figure I saw that night, the sort of missing time and not knowing how I got on the road. And so that's, in a nutshell, pretty quick. That's kind of what happened. It's really strange. Don't know what happened. And the other part of this is, after about a year, I was thinking, okay, I need to get back into work. I was doing other things, but I wanted to get back into law enforcement. So I was starting to apply to other places, and I was start getting into the background, process of everything. And every time I got in and I was going through, everything was fine until the point when they went to contact my old department, and they won't disclose why they let me go. They won't tell these other departments anything. And so that I would never get hired because they wouldn't corroborate, what I was telling them. They said, well, we just don't know what happened. They won't say anything. So that's kind of the other strange part. And so I was never able to get back into it because nobody would hire me because no one could get me any information from the department. So that's
Wow.
that's the strange part of the story.
Wow. I don't know. Yeah, I've been jotting stuff down, but that's a lot of information.
Sorry if I was talking too fast.
No, that's great. I just wanted to let you get your part out before I ask my questions. So you said that someone from county called your department and said they found your badge. So like someone turned it in to them?
Yeah. What I'm assuming happened was actually I really don't know what happened. I don't know if it was just happenstance. Somebody from the main county department called within that time that they had given me before they were going to come arrest me for theft of, things. Mm-hmm. Somehow someone called from some higher up, said, "Hey, we have his badge. We have it here." But I don't know what was said. All I know is that they called and it was settled with my captain at the time. And the only thing that was related to my buddy, who was kind of the middleman, was that everything was good and you're done and, you have been released, and that's all. I mean, I was never told any details.
It just seems like that was supposed to be, where the lesson stopped, but past that, it's like they or it or whoever it is didn't want it to go past that for you. Like they wanted to ruin your life up to this point, but after that would have been too far. Yeah,
I agree. I didn't get a lot of details because even, I kind of had requested to speak with the lieutenant and captain to try and figure out what was going on, and they didn't want to talk to me. They didn't want anything to do with me. They wouldn't tell me anything. The only person I was in contact with was my buddy, who was a corporal, and I don't know what he was told, but or if he was told not to say anything, but he just kept saying, "No, man, you're done. That's it." They have record of your badge, at the county, and that's it. And I don't know where the epileptic seizure came from, but that was the whole story that everybody in the department was told, was that was why I was released, was because I had an epileptic seizure and I was just not fit for duties. And when I was new, and so when you're a new, like, I don't know, it may vary from department to department, but you're on a 2-year probationary period. So ultimately, when you first get hired, they can release you at any time without having to do any explanation. They just can kind of do that to you, and you really don't have a leg to stand on because of the papers you signed. And I really didn't have anything to stand on because of that. I was still within my 2-year probationary period, and I think they knew that, and they didn't want to say anything. I don't know. It was I didn't have anywhere to go because of that.
It all sounds so planned, because even if you called order a pizza, you have to speak, right? What's the only number that you can call, and you just call it, and if you call it enough, someone's going to come out, right? It just it seems all so planned, and then you show up because that's your job. It's unreal.
Yeah, to me, I had that thought too, that this was something that was kind of thought out. I mean, that thought crossed my mind that this was all kind of part of something that was supposed to happen. And, the weird thing was the two dudes that showed up at 5:30 in the morning and knocked on my door, asking me questions about what happened. And I didn't tell them anything except for I had this call and I cleared it and I drove away. I didn't give them anything. And
did those guys seem out of the ordinary to you, or you were probably just so nervous about the whole thing you may not have noticed?
At the time, I was so nervous and so shocked that I was being let go. The thing that was odd about them was, I've heard about the Men in Black thing, and they did kind of fit that general description. They were just two dudes dressed in suits, and they had their old-timey fedora hats on and glasses, and showed up asking me questions. I thought that, well, these guys must be from the county somewhere. They had me sign my forms, and the other weird thing was I couldn't find those forms anywhere. I left them on my kitchen table, and it was only a day since, and I went to go look for them to try and prove to my department that I had signed them, and they were just nowhere to be found. My wife and I scoured the house for them everywhere, and just nowhere to be found. So that was the other strange thing. I don't know. The whole thing was bizarre.
And you mentioned the whole, missing time, and which ties in with abduction, and then you have the blockage in it's only in your left ear?
Only my left ear. The ringing had, always been in both ears, but the loss of hearing was in my left ear, and I've had MRIs done, and they say that there's something there. They just can't tell what it is. They can tell that there's some kind of blockage there, but that there was no way to kind of get in. I don't know. But I've always had, and the hearing has gotten progressively worse in my left ear, and to this day it's bad. Yeah, it's something that I don't want to believe happened, but the reality is it did, and I'm living with all this still, and can't get a job because the department won't say anything about it, and it's so strange. So strange.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting all of that. I'm pretty speechless about the whole thing. I'm sorry all that happened to you.
Yeah, and it's that was in 2009, so it's been a while, and I've kind of come to terms with it as best as I can, and yeah, I don't know. I just kind of had to accept it all to this point.
It's still affecting you to this day, obviously, though. So that thing in the house.
Yes.
I mean, up until a certain point, you thought it still could be a person, and then you're even talking to it like, hey, you got to stand down. It's moving towards you. How close did it get to you? What was the last memory that you had of it?
I think it may have gotten within about 5 feet. I mean, it had covered a good portion of the room, and that's when I started reaching for my weapon. And
do you remember if it was reaching out for you or anything?
It was just moving, just so smoothly and quietly, and the whole thing just didn't look right. But I wasn't thinking paranormal. I was just thinking guy not listening. Huge guy, massive, like tall as the ceiling almost. It was just huge.
And was he solid, or if looking back, are you like, oh, he was a little see-through, or do you remember anything like that?
It was solid. It was solid, just black. I could completely tell out. I could separate the figure from the room. The room was dark. There was a little bit of light coming in through a window. There was a little bit of, I couldn't see. I don't think I could see through it. I think I just knew that there was a figure, and it was just completely dark. Yeah, I couldn't see through. I don't remember seeing through it. I think if I did see through it, I probably would have panicked and maybe just ran out the house or something. But
I don't blame you there.
I don't recall seeing through it. It was just a solid black figure, and again, if it was see-through, I would have thought something else, but I wasn't thinking that at the time.
So let me ask this about you guys' protocol, at least for your department, for the sheriff's department. When you get to this house, and this is a house that has had numerous hang-up calls for 911, you get there and you finally confirm, oh, crap, there's someone in the house. You see this figure walking up the stairs. You called for radio silence, but was it not your protocol to call for backup and wait to go in the house with another person?
It is protocol, and again, it was so long ago. See, with departments, especially with county areas, it's such a big county, and you don't ride with someone, and to have backup call, it could vary from 5 minutes to 20 minutes, depending on
Okay.
how far anybody else is out. So I just made the decision to go in because I think this back slider was open, and I called for radio silence. So I knew, if something went wrong, they knew where I was, and I don't know, I just went in. I didn't wait for anybody. I didn't feel like it was a threatening situation. I don't know, it just didn't seem like the situation where I needed to wait, because there were plenty of times where I would call for radio silence and there was, deputies nearby. I would wait. Sometimes I would even call a canine officer, and that would be best case scenario, but
so it's basically
I
up
didn't wait.
to the officer. Like, if you wanted to wait, you could have called for backup and just seen how long it was going to take them to get there. Okay.
Yeah, it's not, I wouldn't have been reprimanded for walking in by myself or anything like that.
Gotcha. So something else that I jotted down while you were talking was, so you're out of the house, you're driving, you realize you're dizzy, and you have this ringing in your ears, and you're like, something's wrong. You get out of the car and you call your superior, and you say, I need someone to come pick me up. I'm not feeling well. Looking back now, are you feeling like you wish you would have not made that phone call, or do you think that somehow it would have ended up the same with your dismissal? Like, do you wish you would have sat there a little longer and seen what would have happened, even though knowing now, of course, that you still have these lingering problems?
Yeah, I've thought of that. Now I do wish I would have not made that phone call, because ultimately, having been taken to the ER that night, been checked out, and then having to go on like sick leave and waiting to feel better from this dizziness and ringing in my ears. I don't know. I think if I wouldn't have made the phone call and not been taken to the ER, it's hard to say whether or not I would have had someone knocking on my door the next day or not.
Right.
I don't know. It's kind of like, I wish I wouldn't have made the phone call, but at the same time, the way that it went down, I feel like I still would have gotten a knock on the door, because the way that my department, not the department, but my station, the way that they acted, like it was weird. They acted like they didn't know that I had been released. I had that knock on the door the next morning by the two guys, telling me, asking me questions, and then ultimately having me sign a piece of paper telling me I was let go and it wasn't disciplinary. And then me getting a phone call, like, I don't know if it was the next day, from my actual buddy I worked with at my station, asking me what was going on. The whole thing just didn't make sense to me. And the part that was even more confusing was nobody at the station, not even the captain or lieutenants, wanted to speak with me directly. That didn't make sense to me, because, that didn't seem like professional at all. The only person I was in contact with was my friend, who was a corporal at the time, who was kind of playing middleman. And I don't know. They wanted me to return my badge and everything, and I was like, look, you guys came. I signed a paper. The whole thing was very confusing and didn't make sense and didn't add up to me, even at the time or even today. I don't know. The whole thing was just, it's so strange. And even, I think maybe like a year or two later, I had people asking me, why didn't I, fight it or try and go back or, file a complaint and I ended up speaking with a human resources attorney, like a specialist at I'm not gonna say the city, and I explained to him kind of how it went down, and he asked me about the 2 years of probationary period, and I was like, yeah, it was 2 years, and he said, you kind of don't have a leg to stand on if you sign those papers when you first get hired. They technically let you go for whatever reason. And I never really pursued strongly to try and fight it or bring up a case, or, you know, I did reapply to the same department, you know, a couple of years after it had happened, and, you know, my application didn't go further than just the initial turning in my application. It was just denied. I don't know where I'm going with any of this. It's just...
So, because I with you being on the probation, that's a big part of the whole thing, at least in my mind, as far as it all like being this weird puzzle. Also, the other interesting part, this number keeps calling. I'm sorry. The Men in Black, we don't have time for you. We're talking about you, but we don't want to actually talk to you. So, because the quote-unquote county was who they had your badge, and whoever showed up at the door, we don't know who they are. There was assumption. We can make assumptions and guesses on that. But the other interesting thing is that you were on probation, but would anybody either at your department or even higher up from that or below that be notified that quickly as to what happened just the night before? I mean, that had just happened, and then 5:30 or whatever in the morning, these two guys show up at your door. That seems like a really very quick chain of events, when most of these things have to be very, like, you know, filed, and people have to be emailed, and there has to be at least some sort of an investigation, whether you're on probation or not.
I agree completely, and that's the whole weird part about it. You know, the guys showed up at my door and served me papers, and you know, took my badge, and I signed it, and I was very confused. And then it just seemed like, after getting a call from my buddy there, the corporal, asking me, "Hey, what's going on? How you doing?" It seemed like nobody at my station knew that I was let go. And especially because I don't know who the call was coming from, whether it was the captain or the lieutenant. They were threatening to come arrest me because they said that I was withholding my badge and all of my things. And so I don't know, that's the confusing part, is how would they not know that I was released? That should have come down. The decision should have been made within the department, but apparently they had to make phone calls to the actual county, and they did, and they found out that my badge was at county. Strange. And
it really was. That was confirmed. You know that for a fact?
Yeah. I know for a fact, because after I think they literally gave me this, you know, gave me a half hour to find the paper that I signed and my badge.
Yeah, it just seems like a decision like that to be made so quickly. It would have, and this is kind of redundant on my last point, but it seems like a lot of, at least a semi-decent handful of people would have been CC'd on the same email saying, so-and-so is being let go because of this and this and this, whatever it might be, right? Yeah. So did anyone besides the very man that you called when you woke up in the car and you realized what was going on, you weren't feeling well, besides him, who do you know for a fact kind of knew that you know, you didn't know, he didn't even know what was going on. He just knew you weren't feeling well. That was it, right? And that's where the whole epileptic seizure thing came in, which God knows where that came from. But how many other people would have heard that you had, quote unquote, let's assume you had a seizure? Who else would have heard that?
Well, here's the thing. There was an abundance of people on duty that same night who had to have heard me go, you know, 1033, which is, you know, radio silence. Everybody hears that. Everybody, you know, everybody knew I was going into a house. Everybody knew, you know, I was on a call, you know, searching a house or whatever. So, you know, any number of deputies heard that I went in there. Though, you know, the other thing that was never really clarified is where was everybody when, like, there was a period of time between me going in the house and me, you know, being back on the road where I would have had to have cleared the call and been back in my patrol unit driving safely without, people going, lights and sirens to the house looking for me because I wasn't responding to any radio calls asking if I was okay.
Is there a time limit on so you call for radio silence and you go into this property. Is there a time limit before they will break that radio silence and say, are you okay, or whatever the code is for that?
There's not like a specific time limit. The dispatcher will, periodically, like if they don't hear from you, maybe within like a few minutes, maybe even if that, they'll get on, the radio and say, ask if I'm okay, radio code. And, I think I even did like respond maybe once when I was downstairs still searching, saying, I may have even said, I'm code 4, which I don't think I would have because I still hadn't been upstairs where I saw someone walk up. So,
right.
I think, I couldn't have said code 4, everything's okay. So long ago, I'm trying to recall like little details, but
yeah. Unless you just cleared it and you don't remember in between the time.
That is the only explanation I have for people not going lights and sirens like looking for me. I had to have cleared it and gotten back on the road for there not to be like a widespread search of other deputies like looking for me. That's the only way that there would not be people looking for me is if I cleared it myself. That's the only way. And so that had to have happened.
So what was the time difference when you got in the car the next time that you looked at the clock? Was there a problem there?
The time, yeah, definitely. There was like, I'm trying to think. It was anywhere between maybe it was like 30 minutes to an hour, something between there. I mean, it was definitely a time difference because I remember when I went in the house, it was like the sun had been set and there was a little bit of light out. And when I was in my car, it was completely dark out. So, I mean, I don't know. There was a good period of time there. I just can't recall exactly how much time. I mean, I wasn't focused on like looking at the clock when I was, came to in the car when I was driving. I was in such a panic, not knowing how I'd gotten on a road, having all these ringing, I don't know. There's just a whole period of time where I don't just, after seeing this figure approaching me to the point where being back on the road, I don't remember anything between that. And I don't exactly remember what the time period was between. It's hard to say, but, the whole thing is just out of this world strange, and nothing really, I completely, like, to someone listening to this, it doesn't add up. I understand that, because it doesn't add up to me even to this day. Like, none of it. It's just, I don't know. The whole thing is strange.
So,
and I think, yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say that I don't know if it was today or yesterday, I had looked back on like Google Earth. I hadn't actually driven back to the house, but on Google Earth, the house looks like it's not there anymore. It's just a concrete slab. So, I mean, that's just a side note.
Yeah. And so I have to ask, though, is that surprising to you as far as, the area, or do you think they'll put a mall there, or are they just probably going to build a bunch of houses there? Is that strange that the place would be torn down? Was it in that bad a shape?
It was a pretty run-down house. It was an older house, and the area that it's in is just trash, and there's like, there's houses. It's just like a desert area. Not a lot of houses around, and that's the other reason why I didn't really wait for backup to go in, because I knew it would be a while, and I just entered the house.
Have you and this is really casting in that, but I always have to ask, have you ever looked up on any databases like MUFON or anything to see if there's any UFO sightings in the area or any other strange encounters in that particular area of the house? No,
I've never done that. I do know that there's an area close by where there are kind of strange sightings. It's not real close. There's a mountain range that separates my county from the county over, where there's a lot of strange sightings.
Right, but we won't give away your location at all. Yes.
Yeah, no, it's not directly where I was, but there is a mountain range separating my area and this area where there are strange things going on.
Okay. But, interesting. At the very least, right? It's interesting. So, okay.
Yeah, at the very least.
Jumping to the morning where the two guys show up. It's something that I jotted down, and it's very random, and you may not remember or have even seen it, but were they driving a specific kind of car?
Oh, no, that I did not see, because where I lived, it was an apartment complex, and you can't see where the cars are parked.
Gotcha.
It's actually a pretty good walk into like the center of the complex where I was living at the time, and so now I had no idea. I would have never known.
Did any of your neighbors then, did they say, oh, who are those two weird guys that showed up at 5:30 in the morning? Did anybody see? I mean, most people are probably, hopefully sleeping, but.
No, I honestly doubt that anybody even saw them, because I know at that time that place is not active.
Yeah.
And I highly doubt it. And I never spoke to anybody. Nobody ever asked me. It was really early. It woke me up when they were knocking on the door. I was like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Who's knocking on my door at 5:30 in the morning?
Yeah, that would alarm most people. And then to have those guys actually standing there and they're like, here, sign these. You're like, what in the world?
Yeah. And they were asking me what had happened, like what went on. And like, I had no idea how. I mean, I guess I assumed they said they were, I think they said they were from the department. I really don't know. I assumed that these were guys from county, and I assumed it was protocol, that this is the way things were done when you're on probation. They show up, you sign papers, they let you go, they take your badge, and that's it.
Right, like you had no idea because you'd never been through it, right? So
exactly, and I was I think, how old was I? 23 at the time, so I was relatively young and afraid and confused and not wanting to ask questions and argue with these two guys.
Well, I think I've gotten through most of my questions, at least for this experience, where it leaves me at a loss for words too. But so at this point in your life and being able to finally talk about it, and I'm sure all of this has dredged up more, maybe even more memories, and maybe more will come up. But what are your thoughts on the whole thing, and how is it all connected, if it is? I really, like, there was a good year or two when I was actively trying to get rehired, and I couldn't get a job anywhere, because anytime I would go through the background process with other departments, it would always come to a point where everything would be going fine, and they would deny hiring me because the department I was at refused to release any information about why I was let go. And is that normal? Or, I mean, I
no,
suppose
that is not normal, because I've spoken to a lot of people, and nobody understands why that would be. Like, nobody I talk to, and even the human resources attorney that I spoke to couldn't understand that one. He kept asking me, well, what did you do wrong? Like,
right, and like there had to be something major, that you knew about. And so in a normal situation, they are not allowed to withhold why you were let go.
No, they can. They can absolutely withhold it because of that probationary period. I think it's part of the whole paperwork where they can let you go for any reason. And I think it's like their own discrepancy if they want to. But typically, it's not an issue. Like, they'll let anybody know what went on and the circumstances, and it completely was not normal that, it didn't.
And here's the other point, though. If they really felt like they were letting you go for health reasons, why wouldn't they just say that?
That's a good question.
I mean, if their answer was he has seizures, then why couldn't they just say that to anybody that's calling to try to get you on their department or rehire you?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know exactly how it works. I always thought that they didn't want to say that because I thought that, to my understanding, was that they weren't allowed to let people go for reasons like that because of I don't know what the term is, but when someone has a health issue, that they should
right.
accommodate them and find a new position.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. None of it makes sense to me, and it was a really confusing time in my life, and it just kind of, I don't understand any of it even to this day, and I held it in until recently. I found your show, and I was like, you know what, I need to talk about this. I don't have an answer, ultimately. I don't know what went on. I don't know what is being hidden, why it's being hidden, why there's so many questions, things are unanswered. I don't know. Your guess is really as good as mine. I ultimately went nowhere with it. I don't know. To this day, I'm not in any kind of law enforcement position because I can't get hired because of it.
So
Strange.
That actually is not the end of your strange experiences. And so now the threads will continue to be pulled, right, out of the sweater. And I don't know how much of this that you want to get into, but I have some notes jotted down from some of your subsequent emails. And you mentioned dark figures in your home. You mentioned, I jotted down the house that cried, if you want to talk about that. And then tensions between your wife and you guys arguing, and you're not really sure why you're angry. And then, of course, we'll tie it up with what you saw, I think it was, a year ago in your backyard. We'll tie it up with that. But, yeah, let's start with what I first mentioned. So we already started with the dark figure that you saw in that random crappy house in the desert, right? But so what are these dark figures then you're seeing in your own house, and what is the time frame with what happened initially with your law enforcement job?
Okay, so after I was let go, I moved into a home, and this must have been maybe a year or two later. I'm trying to recall, no longer than 3 years after I'd been let go and all this happened with the department. I moved into a home from the apartment complex I was living in when I was with the department. And, the first night we moved into this house, we still had boxes, kind of stacked, and just trying to get the house situated to the point where we could sleep because it was a long day. And this is just the beginning of a lot of weird things that happened. But the first night I was there, I had a bunch of boxes stacked up in the kitchen against one wall. And they're all pretty concentrated in one area, and they're all stacked neatly. I pride myself on my box stacking capabilities. So I knew when this happened that there was no way, there was no explanation. So in the middle of the night, I just hear this loud crash in my kitchen area, and I just spring out of bed. I thought someone was breaking in the house. So I run in there, and one of these boxes, a single box filled with pots and pans, was on the opposite side of the kitchen, laying on the ground, just kind of busted open, and it somehow got from one side of the kitchen to the other. It hit this wall. I remember so bad that it left like a ding in the drywall. And there's no way. It was about 10 feet away from where these boxes were. It was just it hit. I don't know how it happened. It's the strangest thing.
So if
I
it would have fallen, it would have just fallen completely, just straight down because it's full of pots and pans, right? It's heavy, but it was like it was thrown across a room and hit the opposite wall enough to damage it.
It hit the wall with force because there was a good ding in the drywall. And if it had fallen, it would have just fallen directly in front of these boxes and just been on the floor. But it had been thrown like very hard. And that, I somehow managed to just kind of block that out of my mind and try and, I don't know. I was just thinking, well, maybe, I don't know what I was thinking, but somehow I just went back to bed and kind of brushed it off. But that was just the beginning. Later on, maybe a month or two after that happened, we started hearing these baby cries of a baby coming from one of these rooms. It was an empty room. It was a 3-bedroom house, and it was an empty room that really wasn't being used for anything, adjacent to my son's room at the time. And we would hear these baby cries coming from there, and we would be in the living room, and we'd just be sitting there watching TV, and we would just hear, a baby crying, and my wife and I would look at each other and say, did you hear that? Was that a baby? And kind of staring at each other. Yeah, that was a baby crying.
And how old was your son at the time?
My son was 3. He was about 3 years old.
But so he was with you guys, and then you're hearing a baby cry while he's sitting there with you, not crying.
Yeah, I think the first time we heard it, I think he was even outside, out front playing on the opposite side of the house, like in our front yard. We had a grass area, if I remember right.
Oh, crap.
Yeah, I remember getting like goosebumps. I was like, oh my God, what the hell is that?
So the baby's crying, like, you know how there's different baby cries. What sort of a baby cry was this?
It was like a soft, like, not like a scream, just kind of like when a baby's like, I don't know, annoyed.
Yeah.
Or like,
it's the wah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
How long did it go on for?
To do that. It would go on for like 5 seconds, and then I would kind of sit there and quietly listen to make sure I was hearing what I was hearing.
Yeah.
And then I think ultimately, like, I would get up and walk back there, and I would stand in the room and kind of wait and think and see if maybe it was coming from a house nearby. I thought maybe that was possible, but it was so distinct in the house, and it never happened while standing in the room. And that wasn't the only time. We would hear it constantly, like just pretty much the whole time we lived at this house, and even guests would hear it and say, "Do you have a baby back there?" And so it was clearly coming from inside the house, like just the weirdest, creepiest thing. I think that was probably creepier than the dark, shadowy figure I saw, and ultimately,
I have said many a times, if you don't have a baby and you hear a baby crying, you have some serious problems. I mean, that's very, very creepy. People hear this in the middle of a forest, right?
Oh God!
It's supposed to like trigger this primeval need to go and help, and you're going to walk towards it, and I'd be like, I'm going out there. That is the last damn thing I want to go check on is a baby just randomly crying, or in an empty room in your own house. Heaven forbid. That is awful.
Yeah, I would probably chase after a Sasquatch before I would chase after a baby cry.
That's what I'm saying. That is very, very creepy. That's why dolls are creepy and little babies are creepy. Just random cries. Nope.
Yeah. But, with all the other things that went on in this house, I debated whether or not maybe this was maybe a baby had died in this house and we're hearing like residual like sounds from it or something, like a haunting or, I debated that. But after certain things went on in this house, I kind of felt like it was, I want to say maybe demonic, but I felt like something was toying with me, especially after what had happened with the department and coming to this house and other things starting to happen, I just felt like I was being toyed with. And especially the way things kind of spiraled out of control in that house with the relationship that me and my wife had. And, I'll get into that, but I just felt like I was being toyed with. Like, it just was a horrible, I don't know, it was weird. And my mom, on my mom's side, like her mom, my grandma, she's very, she's kind of spiritual, and she says we have a lot of psychics in our family and this and that. And my mom's really the same way. And she would come over and she'd walk in that house and just all the time tell me, this house doesn't feel right. This house does not feel right.
And had she done that before?
No. She's funny. Like anytime I move into a new house, she'll come in, she'll bless it. I bless this house. You guys are safe. You can live here now. And so this was the only house that she ever had bad, strong feelings about. And even to this day, she recalls it. And I think she even heard the baby crying once and got creeped out. Yeah. So go ahead.
Now, after the guys show up at the apartment and you guys eventually move to this new house, what's the time difference there? And so once the guys leave and you leave the department, you didn't see any dark figures or baby cries or anything at the apartment. It was only after you had moved into this house?
Yeah. So that's the other thing. Like, I don't know if the two things are connected. I kind of leave that up to people. Like, I don't know, anybody listening can kind of make their own determination if they're connected, or if I was followed by something, or if whatever I saw when I was on the department, in that house kind of just was dormant and decided to come out and screw with me again, or, I think it may have been like a 2-year period, or maybe even a year. Should have taken notes, and I'm sorry.
I'm the same way. If you ask me what year I bought this or that car, it's really bad with me. I have no clue. Just the same when people are like, it was episode 72, and I'm like, I could not have even guessed that. No, don't worry about that. I'm the same way. Okay, so the entire year or so between you getting let go and getting back or moving to this house, there was really no activity, and then all of a sudden you had the baby cries.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the dark figures.
So, in this house that we moved into, I saw it several times. It kind of matched the figure I saw when I was on the department, kind of in size and just intensity and darkness, and so that's why I kind of link the two, because I feel like this same thing was here again. The first night that I saw it, I was laying in bed in my bedroom with my wife, and I something just woke me up. I just opened my eyes and I look at the bedroom door, and it's opening. It's in the process of opening, which is weird because we always leave our door open anyways, because our son's room was down the hallway. And so I was confused as to why it was opening, because that's just not what we do. We don't close our door at night. So anyways, it's opening, and I'm looking down into the hallway, and I just see this huge, massive figure as tall as the ceiling, about an 8-foot ceiling, walk across the bedroom doorway, clearly the figure, just as dark as can be, and it's walking in the direction of my son's room. And this time I was thinking paranormal because of my past experiences and everything that had been going on. I didn't think that there was someone in my house, because if that was the case, I would have jumped up immediately and chased after it. I was just kind of stunned. I was staring at it. It just moved across my doorway in the direction of my son's room. And as soon as it got out of sight, that's when I jumped out of bed, because instinct just kicked in at that time. And I run into the hallway, and as soon as I look in the hallway, there's nothing there. That was the first time I saw it. It matched the figure that I saw, in that creepy house when I was at the apartment so perfectly. I was convinced that it had followed me, into this house and was just here to torment me. So that was the first instance. Another time, my wife and I were laying in bed one morning, and I don't remember like how much time in between these events were. I only lived at this house a year, so just to give an idea. But this one morning, me and my wife were laying in bed next to each other, and it was real early, and I was just kind of half awake. She was kind of half awake. And I hear these loud footsteps walking away from my side of the bed. And I'm thinking, what? I'm listening. I'm hearing these footsteps. There's carpet. It was like a wood floor, so it was like stomping on carpet, walking away like towards my bedroom door. And I just kind of like lift my head up. I'm listening. I'm hearing these footsteps clearly walk away. And shortly after, I just feel this tapping on the end of my bed. Like you can hear it and you could feel it in the bed. It's just a rhythmic, just tap, 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 tap. And at first I thought my wife was tapping like her feet. I don't know. For some reason I thought she was maybe just moving her feet or something. And it went on for like, 30 seconds. I was just laying there feeling it, listening to it. And then I looked over at my wife and I said, what are you doing? She said, well, what are you doing? So, do you feel that? She's like, yeah, I feel that. And we were both kind of freaked out, and it just continued. It didn't stop. And it just started getting louder and louder and harder and harder and faster. And then it just stopped. It was done. And we both were just super freaked out.
But you guys didn't see anything. Like, did you sit up and look down at the end of the bed?
It was early morning, bright enough to see clearly in the room. I was looking at the end of the bed. I didn't see any impressions. It felt like it was coming from underneath the bed because I wasn't seeing the top of the bed move or anything.
Goodness.
Yeah, and that was like the other freaky part. And so after it stopped, I was like, there's an explanation. This is like too real and too... So I thought, okay, we didn't have any animals. Okay, there's a rat under the bed. There's something under the bed. So I looked under the bed. I looked around everywhere. There was just no explanation for it. It's just super creepy. I don't know what it was. But this thing, I was hearing these footsteps walk away towards the end of the bed. Like clearly, my wife didn't hear the footsteps. I heard them.
Yeah.
I don't know if she was awake at that time.
But then the tapping woke her up, and then you guys are both like, what in the world is that?
Yeah, just really strange, really strange occurrences. And throughout all of this, all these weird happenings in the house, like tension, like beyond, like just anger and just these arguments my wife and I would have, just so out of ordinary and so not who we were. And it was almost like I would have these bad days where I was just mad at the world and anything she said annoyed me, and we would just get into these fights. Just like we had nothing wrong in our relationship by this time. We were just getting these crazy fights, screaming and yelling at each other, and I would feel it. Like I would not feel like I was myself, just not at all. And then after these fights were over, I would just feel like this elation, like something was just gone, and I would be looking back at what just happened and thinking, who am I? Like, what in the world is going on? And it kind of felt like it was swapping back and forth between me and my wife. She would have these angry outbursts, and I would have them.
And would she admit that she felt the same way, that she's like, that was really not like us?
No, I don't think she was thinking in any of these terms. She never saw the black figure. She's never been really someone who accepts paranormal and would make fun of me if I was like watching like Ghost Adventures. She was like, what are you doing watching stupid shows for? So she's never really been one to kind of acknowledge any of that at all. So I don't think she ever thought that something weird was going on. But in my head, like there was something going on in that house, and there was something clearly there, and she would even like blow off the baby cries. Like, come on, I ain't gonna blow that off.
Man, that is a strong chick, dude. I'd have been like, we're going to leave right now. There is a baby crying, and Flash, our 3-year-old is sitting right here, and he doesn't cry like that.
Yeah. So, you know, all of that tension in the house, ultimately, we ended up separating. Things didn't end well in that house. You know, we both got our own places after that. But, you know, after moving out of the house, I mean, that was it. I didn't have any darkness in my life. I wasn't, you know, depressed. I wasn't having these angry outbursts. And I think like shortly after moving out of that house, you know, my wife and I kind of just reconnected and kind of were ourselves again. And maybe that's when, you know, I think she may have acknowledged it maybe once at that point that, you know, things weren't right in that house. But again, she never connected it to anything paranormal. She just probably thought that I don't know, the cabinets were the wrong color and it ticked her off or something. I don't know.
You know.
But, yeah. So after moving out of that house, I really didn't, you know, that was it as far as like dark, shadowy figures and weird things happening, except for, I mean, as far as evil, dark things happening, I mean, that was it. But
there is still something, right?
Yeah, there's one more distinct thing that happened just a year ago in the house I'm living in now. As you can see, we move a lot. So the house I'm living in now, we have a dog, and this dog likes to wake me up at 3 a.m. every morning, scratching on the door to go out and pee or whatever.
Bless you for keeping that dog, by the way.
Oh, I
3 a.m.
So great.
I mean, you gotta love that dog.
Yeah, I am not a morning person either. So
oh man, good, that's pretty brutal.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Was brutal,
keep going.
This one morning, it was kind of early, about a year ago, maybe like a month or so after we moved in. You know, I would regularly get up, take the dog out back, let the dog do her thing. I would walk out back with her, you know, and, you know, it wouldn't take much, 5 minutes. I'd go back inside and fall asleep, wake up at 5 and be miserable. But this one morning, you know, dog scratching at the door. I walk out with her. So I walk into the backyard, and I remember it being like a full moon. So the backyard was pretty well lit. And I could see clearly across my backyard. And it's just a dirt yard, you know, no trees, nothing, just nothing back there. And as soon as I walk into my backyard, and I'm to the point where I can see the entire yard, I noticed this glowing, very dim, but glowing. The only way I can explain it is it looked like it was in the shape of like an egg, kind of, but like 5 foot tall egg. And maybe like 3 feet wide. And I'm looking at it, and I'm squinting my eyes thinking, am I seeing what I'm seeing? And, you know, sure enough, I was seeing it. And it was just kind of dimly lit. And it was just maybe, you know, it was like kind of halfway across the yard maybe. And in the center of this light I was looking at, there were vertical lights that were solid. There's like maybe like, I don't know, I think like 3, 4, or 5 of them. And they were like moving like almost fluidly, kind of just constant. You know, the figure was sitting there, but inside this figure there was these strange lights just kind of moving up and down and flowing and bending. And I'm looking at it, and it just felt like the second that I noticed it, I felt like it noticed me, whatever this thing was, because it wasn't long after this thing started kind of floating and moving away from me, like I had disturbed it, and it just kind of hovered away, didn't make a noise. My dog wasn't reacting to it. I mean, I don't remember seeing my dog. The dog may have like ran behind me. They did notice it, and I just wasn't seeing my dog. It wasn't barking. I was clearly seeing this weird figure. And it wasn't like an apparition of a person. It was clearly like in the shape of an egg. It really didn't feel like, the only way I could feel it felt very alien. I mean, that sounds weird, but it felt very like not in this world. Like the way it just was lit and shaped, and it just moved away, and it hovered, and it went to the opposite side of my yard, and it kind of just vanished, like as soon as it got to the opposite side of the yard. And I stood there for a second trying to figure out, like, I was trying to rationalize it, like maybe there was a person in my backyard and it saw me and it walked away. But nope, that clearly was not the situation. It was just, I don't know, the strangest thing ever. Like, even aside from the shadow person, this thing was like not of this world. It was so weird. So that's, I don't know. Hopefully I explained it okay.
Yeah, and the light, because I had little bullet points written down from your email. So the inside was slightly brighter with the vertical lights, and you said they were white, and they were waving back and forth, right? Like, I'm sure looking back, you're like, so is that for aesthetics or is that functionality? It seems so random, probably to you, right?
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up, because as it started to move away, the lights that were in the center of it got even more erratic, and they started like shaking like crazy. And so when I first saw it, these vertical lights were kind of just smooth and fluid and kind of just hovering. And as it started to move away, it was moving so slow, but as it moved away, these lights were getting crazier and moving and just very erratic. And it was just
so maybe it was for like functionality purposes then.
Yeah.
So it was still moving like slow, but the inside looked like very turbulent.
Yeah, it something was propelling it. I don't know, but definitely when it was moving, these lights picked up an activity. Clearly, there was something in. It had a function. I know it did. It, just like, functionality, like you said.
See, I like that you said, it reminds me of when I was in Washington State with Wes and the Browns. I don't know if you caught that episode where I said that the light that I saw, it was seeming like it was doing its thing until it noticed us noticing it, and then that's when it dove down. It moved. And that's the first thing that I thought of when I read that. Yeah,
it felt exactly like it noticed me. Like it was so still when I walked back there. And as soon as I looked at it, I wasn't scared. I was confused, and I didn't feel like I was in danger. And this thing didn't feel, I don't know if it felt threatened or what, but it just started going away from me like I had bothered it. I don't know what it was doing back there. I don't know what it was. Just the weirdest thing. So, I don't know if all of these events in my life are connected. Still to this day, I have the hearing loss in my left ear. I have the ringing going on. I mean, everybody has ringing in their ears, but I didn't have any of these problems until, when I was a deputy and this, whole event happened. Still to this day, I have problems with it. And I even tried getting into the military because I wasn't able to become a law enforcement officer, but my hearing was so bad in my left ear that I wasn't able to get in. So it's affected me in a lot of ways. Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that. I really am.
It's okay. I've kind of accepted it as best as I can, and I don't know. I just felt compelled though to tell this story after I found your show, and I don't know why. It just felt right. Felt like I needed to tell you. It felt like it was just time. Plus your show's great, so.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I do. Do you feel like you're part of some big scheme for goodness knows what? I mean, sitting here and hearing the whole thing, look, you hit all of and I'm sure you've heard me say this, but it seems like the more people I talk to and the longer I do the show and the more reading and research that I do, things seem like they're tied in, and we're just not figuring out how they're tied in, but they're tied in. And, you know, if you go down the bullet points of your story, you've got shadow people and men in black, and then there's poltergeist activity in your house with the boxes and oppression, like from a demonic oppression. And I'm not saying that's what it is. I'm just, you know, if you just want to categorize something like with you and your wife having the tension and the problems. And then there's the alien aspect. You have something in your ear and you're like, well, were you abducted? I mean, it like runs the gamut. And I'm not trying to make, you know, this big Jerry Bruckheimer movie scenario out of it, but I can't wrap my head around the whole thing. And I'm sure that, I mean, you're living it, so goodness only knows what you think about all this stuff.
Yeah, you can connect the dots, you know, all the way from back from being a deputy till now, and I think, you know, they got to be connected. And I've given it a lot of thought, and I don't want to sound like conspiratorial or anything or insane, but yeah, sure. I mean, it could definitely be all connected and a part of something. And the thing that really tied it in for me was this weird alien light thing that I saw recently. That is the strangest thing ever. And was it there to keep an eye on me? Was it just, I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's been so many weird things that have happened to me since, you know, I don't know, it was 2009.
Yeah, I mean, did that light mess up in letting you see it? Were you supposed to see it? So that was a year ago. Have you had any dark figures, or is there any anger or any residual anything from seeing that light?
No, that since I saw that light a year ago, there's been nothing weird going on. I haven't had any issues. I mean, aside from there'll be days where the hearing in my left ear gets so bad, like my wife gets annoyed because I'm like, huh? What?
Right.
I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't hear. And then there'll be other days where it's not so bad. And
really?
There'll be days where the ring, yeah, oh yeah.
So I have to ask you, and I mean, I know you're not you're not an MD or anything, but I don't know off the top of my head. With hearing loss, isn't it, this is your hearing loss and it's not going to fluctuate at all?
That's what I was told. I saw like 3 ear, nose, and throat specialists and have had a lot of hearing tests done. And everything I was told was, I mean, this is it. Like, this is kind of just what is, and it's not going to get better, and it can only get worse.
But it does get better on some days.
But it does get better, and there are periods of time where I almost kind of forget that I have hearing loss.
What in the world?
And there's days where it's so bad, and the ringing is so bad, and the ringing will get so bad that I'll just get really dizzy. And I've been told that I have Meniere's disease, which is like this sudden feeling where you just kind of like, you get so dizzy you want to fall down, like you just can't, like, I don't know. And then I was told, no, you can buy another ear, nose, and throat guy. That's crazy. You don't have Meniere's disease. That's insane. Who told you that? I was like, well, another ear, nose, and throat guy. So, yeah, everywhere I go, the story's different. Nobody has an answer. I had an MRI done. I think shortly after I was let go from the department. And there was nothing abnormal in the MRI, but every ear, nose, and throat person I went to, except for maybe one, told me that there's definitely blockage in my left ear. Like there's something in there that's causing the hearing loss, but I guess it's, you know, a part of science where they don't really kind of go in and inspect your inner ear because they can't. I don't know.
Right. Well, yeah, they probably don't want to mess with that area.
Yeah.
So here's a crazy thought. You haven't had any activity since you saw the egg shape with the white light. What if that isn't connected to, well, it would be connected to something if it's a freaking egg with white lights floating in your backyard. Never mind. Strike that. Reverse. It's connected to something, but what if it's not nefarious? What if it's not connected to everything else? What if somehow this thing was there to, you know, it's cleansing the area, and although it's not like you're cured or anything, right? You still have your hearing loss and your bad days with the ringing in the ears, which would drive anyone insane. But
oh yeah,
I just,
you know,
I don't know.
It's possible that that's not connected at all, but then again, with everything else, why couldn't it be? You know,
right? I'm wondering. Like, there's been so much dark. There's a lot of dark in your stories, but the leg thing didn't seem so bad.
No, it wasn't bad at all. It just kind of was there and floated away, and it was almost angelic, but wasn't a person. It just wasn't threatening.
It really did. Even just reading it, not even hearing you tell it to me, it does almost seem that way. You can like hear the like the angels singing, and you're like, this is cool. Yeah. Oh, something else that I jotted down. You said that for about a week your dog would go out there and kind of bark at the area, and then after that it didn't do that anymore?
Yeah. That I forgot to mention that. Yeah, after I saw that, my dog would like run back there and bark, which is not normal. My dog doesn't do that. It never did that prior. It would just go back there and be bark, just going crazy. And obviously, I wasn't going back there. I'd stand at my door and just scream at my dog, come back inside.
You're like, you're good.
Call me a wuss. I don't care. I'm not going back there. But, I went back there in the daytime when everything was safe and the sun was out. And I did kind of like say some prayers and things just to do it. And shortly after that, it did kind of die down. And the dog doesn't bark anymore back there. So did the prayers do something? I don't know. Was it connected? I have no idea. Just all very weird things going on.
In some abduction cases, if I remember correctly, and I've been kind of off the whole UFO alien thing for a while. It's not that I don't read them. It's just I don't really cover them as much anymore because it seems like a lot of lights in the sky. Yours is a little different. The whole egg in the backyard is pretty cool. But people will say that if they see grays in their bedroom, they'll do the Lord's Prayer. They'll, in the name of Jesus Christ, something, and they'll go away. And you're like, whoa. Why the hell would an alien from space care about, Jesus' name? So it's just another thread, right? And you're like, it's so much for your mind to take in.
I don't comprehend any of it either. I'm with you. I don't understand it. The prayers worked, I guess. Yeah. I don't know. So anybody seeing grays, go ahead and say a prayer.
That's right. Just flood the backyard with that holy water if you have to, right? Create a swimming pool full of it.
I'm waiting for the next thing to happen in my life, so I really don't know what's coming.
Oh, man. Well, hey, in all seriousness, I thank you for sharing this. I know it wasn't easy to do. I didn't know that it was the first time that you had ever said it start to finish to anybody, and just know that hopefully people will write in and they'll be like, hey, Mr. Anonymous isn't so far off because I had ... And that's always, and you've heard me say this, I'm always just fishing for more stories and trying to get the puzzle pieces put together. I don't know if we'll ever figure it out. I highly doubt that we will, but at least it's something, and at least maybe even just you telling it will make you feel better somehow.
Yeah, definitely kind of lifted the, tension, and it helped tell the story. And like you said, I hope, if someone's listening and they're in the same situation, they're not alone. It's, maybe part of a weird club, but we're not alone.
Yeah, we are card-holding members of the Weird Club, but I have long since just been like, yep, that's me. Even everyone at work knows. They've even seen my quote-unquote business card. I'm like, yep, yeah, I do a podcast, what? And you know what? A lot of times I have my coworkers come up and go, you know what? One time I did see something kind of weird. I was like, oh, you were just kind of laughing last week, so what now? How about that?
Yeah, if you're not careful, the Greys will come get you.
Well, the Greys, the poltergeists, the shadow people, or whatever they want to look like that day. I swear to God, it's something like that. I don't know if that's right, but it's just so many of these stories have many different components to it that all just go, hey, this fits here and that fits there, and why is that? I don't know.
Yeah, it needs to be documented, and hopefully one day it'll be a science and, accepted and listened to and heard, and that's what I hope, at least. And people like you, I just appreciate the hell out of, and everything you do for everybody, and it's just great. I love it.
Thank you. And we'll be in touch, but if anything else happens, feel free to